Hello there. You're watching All 24 News live from Algiers. Coming up next in our news program. The U.S. Supreme Court revoked the constitutional right to an abortion, triggering outcry. Afghanistan civil society organizations are in charge of distributing humanitarian aid to the inhabitants of areas devastated by the earthquake. Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso says that the violent demonstrators want to generate a coup. Eighteen migrants have died after a massive attempt to cross from Morocco to the Spanish enclave of Melilla. Also coming up in our news program, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, will be attending the opening of the 19th edition of the Mediterranean Games. The Emir of the State of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, is also expected to attend as the guest of honor. Hello again, I'm Karim Zachary, and those were today's headlines. Fast in our news, the Emir of the State of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, is expected to attend at the opening ceremony of the 19th edition of the Mediterranean Games hosted in the city of Oran as guest of honor at the invitation of his Algerian counterpart, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune. For more insights about the preparations of the Oran Mediterranean Games, we are joined live by our special envoy, Oussama Ayadi, who is there. Oussama, can you give us more insights about the ongoing preparations to hold the ceremony this evening?
Thank you, Karim. Here we are in Oran. The opening ceremony is just a step ahead to kick off. Everything is ready. Oran is ready. The infrastructure is ready. The opening ceremony is just maybe few hours ahead. The President of the Republic is going to receive and welcome the Qatari Prince Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who is going to be the honor guest here in Algeria and the honor guest of the opening ceremony. As I said before, the opening ceremony is going to include choreography, music, symphonic music, as well as contemporary music. Mr. Salim Dada, who is the orchestra conductor, did not want to give any more information concerning the stars, the Algerian stars who are going to be present here in the opening ceremony, as well as the international stars. Rather than that, everything is going pretty well. Oran is ready, the infrastructure, everything is ready in Oran. Yesterday we saw the official kickoff.
Oussama Ayadi, if you can hear me, how are the FAST sports delegation treated there? I mean, what are their first impressions about the infrastructure that was provided there by the Algerian government?
Yesterday we have been to the Mediterranean village and we have met the 26 delegations who come from 26 countries. Everybody was happy with the conditions. We have talked as well to the water polo contestants who kicked off yesterday. Everything they were very satisfied with the infrastructure, with the weather, with the conditions they are inside the village and in their playgrounds.
Mm-hmm. And what can you tell us about the technology background that was provided there in order to enhance communication and to cover even for foreign medias there?
Mm-hmm. Everything is put in place here in Oran. Technology is available even for press, international press, national press, for contestants, for delegations here. Everything is in place, transportation, technology, everything.
Thank you, Oussama Ayadi. You were live with us from Oran province. Moving on to a different matter now. Palestinian authorities announced this morning the death of a Palestinian boy, Mohammed Abdullah, after being severely injured by the Zionist occupation army's bullets in the central West Bank. Several dozen Palestinians have been killed recently in Zionist military raids in the occupied territories. 18 migrants have died after a massive attempt to cross from Morocco to the Spanish enclave of Melilla. Clashes took place at the Moroccan territory and resulted in the death of 5 agents, 3 soldiers, a policeman and gendarme, in addition to several dozens of sub-Saharans. Some Spanish sources say that the death toll could rise up to 45. This is the first mass crossing since Spain and Morocco resumed diplomatic relations last month. The Prime Minister of the Libyan National Unity Government, Abdelhamid Dbeibeh, welcomed the statement in which France, Germany, Italy, Britain and the United States of America called on Libyan leaders to hold credible, transparent and inclusive presidential and parliamentary elections as soon as possible. Dbeibeh said that the joint international statement is consistent with its position rejecting violence of the seizure of the power by force or the creation of any parallel bodies. The US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and revoked the constitutional right to an abortion, triggering outcry in and outside the US. Miriam Zian with more insights. Don't have the report. We will get back to it later. Abortion rights advocates staged protests Friday in several major cities around the country. Protests were taking place in major cities, including Los Angeles, where people chanted, "Rise up for abortion rights." The gathering took place at Pershing Square and the federal courthouse. Some demonstrators blocked traffic while other protesters clashed with a line of police who tried to block them from advancing.
I think this is an important right for women to have, and it's an important decision that's been made. I don't take it lightly at all. I think that this is part of the freedoms that we enjoy in America as women, and I think it's important that we keep those freedoms for many of us.
A day after a Supreme Court ruling that broadly expanded gun rights, U.S. Congress passed the most significant federal gun restrictions in decades, sending the bill to President Joe Biden's desk to sign. 14 Republicans backed the measure, and the gun legislation was supported by major law enforcement groups in the United States. The legislation passage is a rare defeat for U.S. gun manufacturers and the National Rifle Association.
All of us who have met with survivors in the wake of the tragedies have heard their message loud and clear. We must do something. Today, in their honor, we heed their powerful cry, sending the major gun violence prevention legislation to President Biden's desk for signature. And we send it to the President for his signature with gratitude for his leadership on this important issue.
During BRICS Summit, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, highlighted Algeria's approach to the establishment of new economic order, where parity and equality will prevail between countries on Friday via a video conferencing technique. Let's listen.
ليس من قبيل الصدفة أن تعيد مثل هذه التجاذبات.
Such tensions bring to mind and highlight the proposal made by Algeria nearly 50 years ago about the necessity of seeking to establish a new economic system that guarantees parity and equality between different countries.
يضمن التكافؤ والمساواة بين مختلف الدول.
In the high-level dialogue on global development, the Russian President Vladimir Putin defended Russia's position in the food crisis in front of some 15 African and Asian leaders.
This is not the result of the last months, and even more the consequences of Russia's special military operation to protect the Donbass. A sharp rise in inflation did not occur yesterday. It is the result of recent years of irresponsible macroeconomic policy of G7 countries. Some Western countries use such cynicism to address these issues, destabilizing the global market for agricultural production.
вопросам подобного рода.
And on the Russia-Ukraine war, after weeks of ferocious fighting, Ukrainian forces will retreat from a besieged city in the country's east to avoid encirclement. The city of Severodonetsk, the administrative center of the Luhansk region, has faced recently relentless Russian bombardment. Hussam Burkan with more details.
From city to city, the Russian forces are advancing with new victories in eastern Ukraine. The Russians victorious in the Battle of Severodonetsk after the Ukrainian forces received orders to withdraw from the city, as staying there was no longer feasible, according to the governor of Luhansk region.
Different types of troops are at the forefront, but I'm calling those defenders, and this includes the soldiers of the Defense Forces of Ukraine, the National Guard. They have already received the order to withdraw to new positions, to new fortified territories, and carry out full-scale fights from there and inflict losses on the enemy.
Control of Severodonetsk is very important for Russia to dominate the last Ukrainian-controlled territory in Lugansk, an advance that will transfer the battle to nearby Lysychansk in the Donbas region, as Russian forces are trying to encircle the city, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. In turn, the Russian counterpart reported that Russian armed forces have continued their special military operation in Ukraine, and about 2,000 Ukrainian fighters were trapped in Hirsky, located 20 kilometers south of Severodonetsk.
The armed forces of the Russian Federation continue the special military operation in Ukraine. Bastion Coastal Missile System has launched an attack at the firing position of S-300 air defense missile system near Odessa. The target has been eliminated. Russian air defense means have destroyed 2 Su-25 airplanes in Kharkov region.
The noticeable Russian progress on the fighting front in eastern Ukraine is considered by Americans to be slow and very costly. As for the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Severodonetsk has been considered a repositioning at new points which would allow Ukrainian fighters to better defend their new positions and target Russian forces.
Tens of thousands of Georgians resumed pro-EU rallies in the capital Tbilisi, Georgia, in front of the parliament building. Protesters demanded the resignation of the prime minister after the country was not given candidate status by the European Union, while making Ukraine and Moldova candidates for EU membership.
I respect European values. This is about the independence of the judiciary and freedom from oligarchy. The rule of one man must be eliminated from our country.
Afghanistan civil society organizations are in charge of distributing humanitarian aid to the inhabitants of areas devastated by the country's deadliest earthquake in decades. However, foreign assistance organizations struggle to deliver quick supply to remote parts of Afghanistan, as thousands of people still lack food, shelter, or water in these areas.
I was informed that we needed to be ready for another 1,000 families. Either tomorrow or the day after, we have to send aids for these families.
More than 2,500 firefighters and 41 water-dropping planes and helicopters were arranged to fight the blaze which erupted on Tuesday near a popular resort in southwestern Turkey. The country's forestry minister said the fire may be close to being contained, but the wind still posed a risk. According to Turkey's disaster management agency, more than 400 people have been evacuated from their homes as a precaution. Flood victims in India's Assam state said they were struggling to get access to adequate food and safe drinking water as large parts of villages and towns remain under water. The floods had displaced over 5 million people. Authorities have deployed Air Force helicopters to drop food and other supplies to cut off communities. And on the Roe versus Wade court ruling, let's follow this report by Miriam Zia.
The U.S. Supreme Court overturned its landmark decision in Roe v. Wade, which granted the legal right to an abortion with a ruling that marks a radical change in reproductive rights in America. The court voted 6-3 Friday to uphold a Mississippi law banning all abortions after 4 months of pregnancy, upending 49 years of legal precedent. Biden said the decision was a tragic error and an extremist ideology.
That's never been done to a right so important to so many Americans. But they did it. It's a sad day for the court and for the country.
While Vice President Kamala Harris said this is a healthcare crisis.
This is a healthcare crisis. Because understand, millions of women in America will go to bed tonight without access to the health care and reproductive care that they had this morning.
At least 26 states are expected to ban abortion immediately or as soon as practicable, and Republican-led state Missouri claimed to be the first to ban abortion. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said the people have won victory.
You know, today's Supreme Court decision in Dobbs is the most important pro-life ruling in American history.
Regions of the South and Midwest are expected to ban abortion and impose severe restrictions, possibly forcing patients to travel hundreds of miles or self-manage abortions. However, in the same decision, the U.S. Supreme Court was clear that the constitutional right to access contraceptives remains untouched. Quickly after the verdict was announced, massive protests erupted outside the courthouse and in major cities and smaller towns across the U.S. According to the Center for Reproductive Rights, the U.S. is one of just 4 countries since 1994 to restrict abortion, prompting critiques and support in the same time from across the world.
Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso says that the violent demonstrators want to generate a coup, which marked his 12th day of unrest that killed 6 people. Islam said with more insights.
Guillermo Lasso, the president of Ecuador, accused indigenous leader Leonidas Issa on Friday of plotting a coup and warned that protests that have lately swept several areas of the nation were attempting to destabilize democracy and left at least 6 people dead during clashes with the police.
It has been proven that the real intention of the violence is a coup d'etat, and that's why we are calling on the international community to warn against this attempt to destabilize democracy in Ecuador.
Lasso warned that the security forces would defend public order and that he would use all legal resources to confront vandals and criminals.
In defense of the citizens and the institutionalism of the country, the national government will use all the legal resources permitted by law to confront the vandals and criminals. The national police and the armed forces will act with the necessary means to defend public order and democracy within the legal framework through the progressive use of force.
Protesters have roamed in the capital, attacking vehicles and civilians and forcing many businesses to close. The organization Human Rights International said 4 of its staff members were physically attacked while carrying out research and verification work on the protests in Quito. The situation has also prompted several embassies, including those of Germany, Britain, Canada, and the US, to call for the parties to negotiate and reach tangible agreements. The Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities called for the demonstrations as part of a nationwide strike to reduce prices of agricultural products and gasoline, as well as funding education.
Bruno Pereira, who was killed this month while investigating threats to isolated tribes in the Amazon, was laid to rest on Friday in his own country, Northeast. Pereira was buried after a funeral attended by family and indigenous Brazilians, paying their respects to the man who spent his career studying and advocating for indigenous people. Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit Hong Kong next week to mark the 25th anniversary of the city's handover to China. The trip will be the first for Mr. Xi outside mainland China since January 2020 after the COVID-19 outbreak. The Chinese president will also attend the inaugural ceremony of the 6th-term government of Hong Kong. To Africa now, Burkina Faso's army has given civilians 2 weeks to evacuate vast areas in northeastern and southeastern regions of the country in advance of military operations against rebel fighters. The military evacuation order follows after a major attack by rebels on June the 11th that left at least 100 civilians dead and displaced thousands more. The West African country's army this week ordered civilians to leave 2 large military interest zones to protect them, but did not specify how long they would have to evacuate or where they should go. The Commonwealth member states met in Rwanda to discuss trade, food security, health issues, and climate change. The summit is the culmination of a series of meetings earlier this week that reported some success in efforts to better the lives of people in the 54-nation bloc. Nabil Khazini.
For the first time in 4 years, leaders of 54 countries in the British Commonwealth met in Rwanda to discuss ways to strengthen relations and tackle global problems ranging from healthcare and conflict to climate change and food security. Unlike the plane which was set to send asylum seekers to Rwanda last week, Boris Johnson's plane landed in Kigali, where the summit was held against a backdrop of criticism of the Rwanda's human rights record and of a British policy to deport asylum seekers there. The British Prime Minister defended his government's plan, saying it would benefit both the UK and Rwanda.
This kind of partnership, I think, it would be good for Rwanda, good for the UK, and the only way of, one of the only ways we have of dealing with the people traffickers.
In 2009, Rwanda, which is a French-speaking country, became member of the Commonwealth. In 2022, 2 similar countries, Gabon and Togo, are set to join the Commonwealth.
This membership of the Commonwealth will have an economic impact on the daily lives of Togolese. This revival will allow the country to revive economically, because there are links that will be created economically.
If these 2 West African nations are accepted into the organization, they will be the latest countries to become members of the Union that have no ties to Britain.
Well, that's all we have for now, but here is a quick reminder of our top stories. The U.S. Supreme Court revoked the constitutional right to an abortion, triggering outcry. Afghanistan civil society organizations are in charge of distributing humanitarian aid to the inhabitants of areas devastated by the earthquake. Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso says that the violent demonstrators want to generate a coup. Eighteen migrants have died after a massive attempt to cross from Morocco to the Spanish enclave of Melilla. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, will be attending today the opening of the 19th edition of the Mediterranean Games. The Emir of the State of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, is expected to attend as the guest of honor. Well, we reached the end of our program. This is Karim Fazakari signing off. Thank you for tuning in. Bye for now.